Well, 2024 is over. Well, practically over, unless you're watching this in the future, in which case, good evening, time traveller. This is You Call That Radio, December 2024. I am quantum leaping from a past time to tell you this is the best albums of 2024.
Quantum leap.
But obviously there is no such thing as best albums. What about all the albums I never listened to? What about all the albums I never listened to enough? And what about all the albums I listened to at the start of the year but I forgot about? Because it's not like I'm walking about with a notepad every time I listen to an album. So there's no perfect science to this. What this is my personal favourite albums of the year that I can remember off the top of my head, subject to change. And you know, there's no particular running order to this. What makes my 18th album of the year worse than the 19th album of the year? It's all a bit silly, but I like to see other people's lists, so I hope some people might be interested in my recommendations. I like other people's lists so much that I might even make a list of the best of lists of the year. But I think the main problem is there's just so much music. There's maybe too much music at the minute. So I'm hoping that by me listening to all this music, people out there that are confused, like, what is good? All this is good. In my opinion, all this is very good. I do this out of appreciation for the hard work and the time and the money that goes into making an album in this day and age. I do this to just recognise music that's touched me in some way. Songs that have improved my life. Things that have inspired me. And I do this so one day in the future, I can quantum leap back in time and feel these same feelings again.
Quantum leap.
Arab Strap, I'm totally fine with it. Don't give a fuck anymore. And I was going to start with the first song, but I don't even know how to pronounce it, so if I had to go to one of those websites, and how does it say it? Allatonsness, but that's an American accent, so I may be saying it in a weird way. Allatonsness, and it means, it's a word that refers to the end or stoppage of space and time. It's the opening track, and it's a phenomenal song. One of the best songs of the year, and one of the best songs Arab Straps ever did. Just angry, grungy. The whole album's got a little bit more effects pedals to it than I was expecting. The music's phenomenal, and Aidan Moffat's in top form. Songs of heartbreak, drinking, getting older, politics, and they just sound, the whole band sounds in top form. They sound angry, they sound motivated, and I think it was back in May I listened to it for the first time and I went, I bet you this is going to be one of my albums of the year. And I've listened to it many times since, and it gets better and better with each listen. And actually seen Aidan Moffat at a free bar at Scottish Album of the Year, and hopefully I didn't embarrass myself because I was drinking free cocktails, and I normally just stick to beer. But I said to him, it's a great album, and I think you were robbed. And I meant that. So hopefully I didn't embarrass myself too much, but Arab Strap were really quite influential in me starting to write music and perform music. It was the first time, I think I got an Arab Strap song as part of a compilation with an NME CD that came free with a magazine. That's how old I am. And I just heard somebody swearing in a Falkirk accent, and I thought, this is cool. It sounded like it's nothing I'd ever heard before. Love it. Definitely one of the albums of the year. Go and check it out.
Quantum leap.
JPEGMAFIA. I lay my life down for you. This is the freshest sounding album of the year. Obviously, if you've heard JPEGMAFIA before, you've heard the style before. It's sort of industrial punk meets hip hop, but you know, he's always been experimental. He's always been trying out new things. But as much as I'm a fan of his back catalogue, this is JPEGMAFIA at the peak of his powers. I've listened to it so many times. There's always something new to take from it. Lyrically vicious, and just the unique way that he attacks these beats, the way that he mixes, the way that he splices, the way that he creates. He's ahead of everybody else right now when it comes to the production. The production values are insane. It's never boring. It's always changing. It'll never be mainstream for that reason, but he's just getting more and more famous around the world. He was, I think, I might be wrong, but I think Kanye West, he had a beef with Kanye West, and he said, I could help fix your album, and Kanye West brought him in. He's your favourite producer at this stage. Please give it a listen, not once. If you've never heard JPEGMAFIA before, it might take you 2 or 3 times to get it, but it's just, you know, and I've listened to it so many times, I love it. It's fresh, I just keep saying fresh, but it feels so fresh. Nobody's doing it like JPEGMAFIA at the minute.
Quantum Leap.
Fontaines DC with Romance. It's been quite a journey for this band. They started out as kind of punk, post-punk, Dublin, angry, energetic youth. What a first album, what a debut album. I seen them play in Bristol at Downs Festival. What a day that was. Grace Jones, Law on the Hill, Idols. It was Nina Cherry as well. What a day that was in Bristol. But when Fontaines DC played, they had some sound issues, not their fault. There was something wrong with the sound. But they also played Transmit around about the same time, and they absolutely smashed it. And I just thought, what an exciting, new, sort of energetic, angry, youthful band. And then they changed it up completely. Since then, they took a totally different direction. I would say there's some similarities with the way that Radiohead just changed it, got popular for doing something, and decided we don't want to be tagged, we don't want to be typecast with that, and they just changed it up completely. At first, I wasn't sure how to take it. I love Jackie Down the Line from the sort of earlier change, but I feel like this album is perfect. It's an emotional album. It can be quite slow at times, but in the best ways. And, you know, I've heard people sort of, there's been some criticisms labelled at it, but I think you've got to really listen to it in a certain place. I listened to it on a very long train journey after hearing bad news, and it was therapeutic to listen to it. There's absolute classics like Starbuster, and in the modern world, they're now selling out the Hydro. They're a stadium band, and these songs work well at stadiums. They are Radio 1 playlisted band, and it's quite unusual for something to be so popular and reasonably new. I mean, it's quite unusual for any band to sort of hit these heights so early on in their career and be good. That's the thing, it is actually good music. I'm also curious what they're going to do next, because they just seem to be in it for the art and seem to be doing new, interesting things every time they make a record, and they don't really seem to care what their fans or what critics think. It just so happens that it's popular. I don't think they went to set out to make a pop album. I think it just so happened to be popular.
Quantum Leap.
This is the most recent album I've added to my list. It's Doechii with Alligator, Bites, Never Heal. And I've known, by the way, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Doechii, because I've never really spoke to anyone about Doechii or said it out loud before. So I hope I'm pronouncing that right. That'd be embarrassing. Top 10 album, can't I say the name right? I've been aware of her random songs, random verses. Appears on an amazing album, Tyler the Creator album, which is definitely top 20, if not top 10 as well. That's a fantastic album, and I'm not usually a massive fan of Tyler the Creator, but what an album he had this year as well. But so obviously I'd heard her on that album, I'd seen her in cyphers and just songs here and there, and I knew an incredible wordsmith, incredible rapper. But then I think it was Jess shared the Tiny Desk concert on social media, and I watched that Tiny Desk concert in awe. If you've not seen it yet, go and check it out. The Tiny Desk concert is kind of stripped back with a full live band, and then I was aware that this is not just a good rapper. We're witnessing a great, one of the greats, iconic performance at Tiny Desk concert. That I'm more of a hip hop fan. I'm not such a fan of the R&B stuff that usually gets thrown into the hip hop albums as much. But even the R&B stuff, it's quite clear. There's a self-awareness in the lyrics that breaks through the fourth wall, almost raging that she has to do it for the record label, slagging the record label, and obviously they're trying to make a hit album. And I think she's trying to make a hit album, and so the record label, obviously. But it's the production is amazing. The lyrics are sharp. I keep on saying sharp, but they are razor sharp lyrics again. I'm a lyrics guy. I like lyrics, and the lyrics are off the scale. The flow is absolutely incredible. I know people will try to compare or to other female rappers, but I don't see a female comparison at all. There's maybe elements of Kendrick Lamar in there that I could maybe say. I'm not going to compare it or to any other female rappers at all. I'm just going to say this is one of the best rappers as a whole that on an album that I've heard for a very long time. So good, so good. I can imagine this is one that the kids will be playing as well. I can imagine it being very popular, but the kids probably shouldn't be listening to that and parental advisory and all that, some of the lyrics. But, you know, we were listening to Dre and Eminem when we were weans. All the bravado, all the boast seem to be done in a sort of tongue-in-cheek, humorous way. There's some really great confessional material in there as well. And there's just some fun bangers. And like even the R&B stuff that I normally would skip, I really enjoyed that too. It is well deserves to be in the conversation for album of the year, 100%.
Quantum Leap.
Paul Heaton, the mighty Several. His opening track's called A National Treasure, which is very fitting because in the last few years I would say he's a very definition of a national treasure in the minds of most of the general public. Making the whole album is what you would expect for Paul. It's pop anthems, relatable anecdotes, and a wee sprinkle of working class politics. And what a year he's had. He's been selling out stadiums or stadium-sized arenas, like places like the Hydro, all while keeping prices affordable for people on lower incomes. He's charging at least half of what his contemporaries are doing, but actually throws a show with twice the spectacle. And he's just generally been a bit of a hero this year, just by having a go at ticket companies and the greed that blights the music industry in general. He also throws money behind the bar. I mean, when I went to Transmit last year, he threw money behind the bar at some East End Glasgow pubs as well. Taking Bells Hill singer Rianne Downey from practical obscurity to international superstardom. my understanding, the way the story goes, is that she did a Beautiful South cover on Instagram over lockdown. He seen it, and he invited her to record this album and go on tour with the band. And she does a brilliant job. She had some large shoes to fill, but she's excellent on it. And she's now getting the bookings and praise and sales and streams that her talent warrants. And she's got some big festivals coming up. She's quite high up the bill, obviously. And having that experience of touring such big shows with Paul Heaton, it's going to be a big year in 2025 for her. And she really does add to the album. And yeah, just when I listen to the album, it takes me back to sitting in my dad's car. What car? Well, the first car that jumps to mind was a Dolly Citroen. My dad had a Dolly Citroen 2CV, is it called? I'll put a picture on the screen of it. As you can imagine, the most embarrassing car you could have as a 12-year-old. But I think there was a cassette player. Or maybe I'm getting mixed up. But I remember sitting in my dad's car. He had the cassette for Beautiful South, Carry On Up the Charts. And it was the song, Good as Gold, but Stupid as Mud. That captivated me as a child. And just the whole album is just classic after classic. So that's what kind of got me into the Beautiful South. And then I found out about the House Martins after it. So I did things sort of a wee bit back to front. And every time Paul Heaton has something new, I make a point of listening to it. I just hear that golden voice, that friendly, familiar, dulcet tone. And unlike a lot of sort of pop music that I don't like, is because I feel like there might be melody and there might be production, but there's a lack of grit to it. And I think, although Paul's got a very melodic singing voice, there's a lot of grit to the stories that he tells. There's razor sharp lyrics in there, and just a fantastic writer and a man of the people. And I'll just throw in my own wee personal story, my wee name drop. But Paul Heaton actually played my band's song on the radio when we were literally unknown. We had a few followers on MySpace, and that was about it. I have no idea how he found us, but he emailed me, and I thought it was a prank, but it was just because he wanted to play a song called Jeremy Kyle Fucked My Wife, and he asked if I had a radio edit. I had no idea how to do radio edits back then. We just recorded an EP in a studio. But he still played it. He played that song, Jeremy Kyle Fucked My Wife, on BBC Radio. I think they reversed the word fucking, so it still sounded like fucking. It was like, Jeremy Kyle's been fucking my wife, or something like that. But that led to gigs and friendships in Manchester, and, you know, certain Scottish radio DJs and podcasts, I don't know if podcasts were a thing. Bloggers, they just started taking my band a bit more seriously. Like not very seriously, but yeah, just by getting, you know, he said something nice about us that we could use in our bio as well, and that just really opened doors for us, and so I'm always appreciative of that. And yeah, just I'm a big fan. He does things in his own way, at his own pace. He's not concerned about trends or fame, but he just stays famous and stays relevant because he follows his own vision. And it's just heartwarming to see a good guy continue to knock it out the park.
Quantum Leap.
Lives Outgrown by Beth Gibbons. Now, most people, if you're not familiar with the name, you will be familiar with her previous band, Portishead, one of my favourite bands of all time. And there's just something, it's hard to, you know, pick your favourite albums, but I got my list down to about 20 or 30. If you're enjoying this, by the way, leave a comment and let me know, and I'll give you another 10, because actually another former member of Portishead, Beak, nearly made it into the top 10 as well. So they'd probably been in the top 20 if I do another 10 recommendations. But yeah, the voice of Portishead, and it's one of those iconic voices that just transports you to somewhere else. And I was in a park bench in Denniston listening to that. I think it came out in May, so about June, July, I don't know. It was a couple of months after it had came out. I finally got around to listen to it, and I was just sitting on a park bench in Denniston, waiting on, I think I turned up 3 hours early to a dentist appointment or something stupid like that. And I just sat there listening with a bit of sun, and yeah, it was a tough week. I remember. I mean, that's what good music should do, man. I could feel the sadness coming out of my body just listening to Beth's voice, and yeah, man, it almost made me emotional just listening to it. She sings from the heart. I believe her when she sings, and it's just a beautiful piece of music, and I recommend it highly. Beth Gibbons, Life's Outgrown.
Quantum Leap.
And now to Providence, Rhode Island, for B. Dolan, The Wind Is Not the Body. An incredible album. First time I seen B. Dolan was he was supporting Scroobius Pip at the Archies, R.I.P. to the Archies, of course, and it just blew me away. I think it was Gasp had introduced me to him before. I'd heard of him, but I seen him live that day, and he absolutely blew me away. And I immediately invited him to play a venue I was working with at the time, Pivo, next to Central, and he came and played a show. It was incredible, and I've been following his career ever since. And this album's been a while in the making because you had the pandemic, but B. Dolan also had spinal surgery, and you know I know all about that kind of stuff with my own personal circumstances, and he kind of stayed connected to his fans by doing Twitch streaming, kept his audience, and he kind of kept them in the loop with all the moves he was making in this album. So I really waited. It felt like I waited a long time for this album. The hype was unreal, and then to finally hear it, incredible. The Rock Cried Out was the first single to come from it, and there's something really beautiful about that song, very touching. And then you've got songs like The Traveller, which you can relate to from the touring life. Fantasy Baseball is another good one. That's about the top 5 rappers, and that annoying question of who's your top 5. So that's why I made sure the first question I asked B. Dolan when he come on You Call That Radio was, what's your top 50 rappers? But yeah, it's a phenomenal album. The Last Temptation of Boy Coyote is a very clever written thing. Ice Cream Wars, which I assume is an ode to Glasgow Gang Fair, and I thought he dealt with that subject very well. You're talking about a very thoughtful writer here, somebody that doesn't just put any old shit on a page and record it. A B. Dolan album takes time, it takes effort, and the results are worth it. Phenomenal album. The Wind Is Not the Body. B. Dolan, go and check it out.
Quantum Leap.
Next up, it's technically an EP, right? It's technically an EP, but I've seen people win Scottish Album of the Year with less tracks. How many tracks are we on here? 6 tracks. Well, I think it is an EP, right? But it's an album. It's an album that everyone needs to listen to. It's an EP. It's Bootlicker by Doechii, but it's going in my albums of the year, even though it's an EP. I don't make the rules. I do make the rules. I actually do make the rules, so it's an EP that's in my albums of the year. But Bootlicker has got to be there. Doechii are probably the most exciting live band in Scotland right now. They're absolutely smashing it. They're on a European tour right now, and they just got their cars broken into. They lost all their guitars and their merch and all that kind of stuff. So there's actually a GoFundMe. I'll put a link in to support them so they can continue their tour. And they'll be playing. They're playing this weekend in Glasgow. They'll be back this weekend in Glasgow. But yeah, go and support them. Go and download this EP. It's a £5, and it says buy digital album on Bandcamp, so that's good enough for me. The classic King of the Castle's on there. It's got Hungry, absolutely brilliant track. It's got the amazing chorus, You Can't Take a Holiday for Yourself. Billy, and it's shite being Scottish, or it's called Clearance. And Concrete Cowboy. It's a solid piece of work. I can't wait to hear a full album for them. They kind of started to do it as just the two brothers with a backing track, but now they've got a full band, and it's sounding amazing live. We shared the stage with them at Bearded Theory this year in the Convoy Cabaret. Shouts to the Convoy Cabaret for having us both. And yeah, no, I believe Solly when he speaks. I believe him when he screams into that microphone. The lyrics are sharp. The music's banging. It's the sound of Glasgow in 2024, and I think next year's going to be a massive year for them. They just got a radio session on BBC Radio Scotland, which is an amazing start. I can see them going places. Getting now, I think the stereo gigs already sold out, so they're at the level now where they can sell out stereo. Next year, St Luke's, then the Barras. That's what's happening. DOS are going to be one of Scotland's most important bands, so check it out if you haven't already.
Quantumly.
Kneecap Fine Art. There is no words to really say about the rise of Kneecap. I'm going to try anyway, obviously, otherwise we'd be having a bit of quiet time. Kneecap, I've been listening to Kneecap for a few years now. I was originally suggested them by a friend who was interested in bringing them to Glasgow, and I kicked myself that I didn't get involved at the time. But I'd promised my partner that I was not going to get involved in live music anymore. I was going to focus on the podcast, which I did, but I'll regret that. But after watching the movie, I'm actually looking at it another way, and I wonder how much of it was me being a shite bag. Was I just scared to put Kneecap on in Glasgow in case shit happened? You know, as a Celtic fan from a Rangers town, I know what it's like, man. How bad the west coast of Scotland can be. And so I have been reconsidering things since I watched the Kneecap movie that they made this year, and just thinking about, you know, it's not like it was bad, but you just get on with it. But you know, there was a massive divide: Celtic, Rangers, Catholic, Protestant, and you know, you couldn't wear. It wasn't that bad, but you know, you could. There were certain days certain places where you shouldn't be wearing a Celtic top, and I hadn't really thought about that much until I seen the movie again, and it does make me reevaluate what it was like growing up in that kind of environment, and to make such a good movie, I mean, I know I'm going to go back to the album in a minute, but the movie tells the story of Kneecap, and it's like something out of, it's like Train Spotting, an Irish Train Spotting, or something like that. I think it's the best. I'm just trying to put it up as a higher quality of film as Train Spotting. I watched it in the cinema. We took about 10, you call that radio patrons, for a day out, and I was mesmerised by the storytelling. I laughed at all the comedy, and the tunes were absolutely banging. What a soundtrack from it. There was some, but we're not going to get this in trouble. Let's get back to Fine Art, the album. But yeah, just to come from the underground Irish rapping in Irish, the idea that they're now playing Coachella and with all these fancy American talk shows is crazy, but gives a lot of. It's really good to see from an underground perspective, to see that sometimes it does happen. You know, sometimes things inexplicably get popular and people are rewarded rightly for their talent. Fine Art's bangers from start to finish. It starts off with a kind of an ode to traditional music of old, and then it gets straight into absolutely banging beats. The 808 state sample is incredible. There is the lyrics that I can understand. Obviously, I don't speak Irish Gaelic, but the lyrics that I can understand are always hard hitting. The flow and delivery is undeniable for both of them, and the beats throughout are just phenomenal. The beats throughout the album are phenomenal. I've seen them play the bars a few times now, but just seen them recently last month again, and the audience absolutely love them. The gigs are chaotic. You've got guys in tricolour balaclavas going mental. The crowd are going mental. It's one of the best live things I've seen of the year. The film is one of the best films I've ever seen, and the album is undoubtedly one of the albums of the year.
Quantum Leap.
And here we have it. My personal favourite album of 2024 is She Drew the Gun with Howl. And it took me by surprise a bit because I've been a fan of She Drew the Gun for years, but it's normally more kind of sort of leaning towards indie, post-punk sort of sound. And this has got a kind of retro 80s vibe to it, sort of electronic sounds to it. So it's a curveball, but a welcome one. Louisa is a songwriter and probably one of the most underrated songwriters in the UK. I love people that use their own accents. I feel like they're actually having a conversation with the listener, and it's great to hear the Liverpool accent over such incredible music. Louisa is paying attention to the world. There's the themes of the album. There's a lot of... It sounds like a breakup album. I think it is a breakup album. So there's a lot of turmoil and heartbreak throughout. And there's also... Louisa is paying attention to the landscape, the political landscape, current affairs, and the turn of phrase is exceptional. Knows how to start a song with a phrase that will just hook you in, and that's you tuned in till the end of the track, and then you want another one. It's addictive. I've listened to this album more than any other album this year, and I think it only came out at the end of October or the start of November or something like that. It's a rare ability to write about abstract things that are happening in the news, personal feelings, yet somehow write an absolute banger of a chorus. The melody, the rhythm, the pacing, there's no skippable tracks. It just plays from start to finish like a perfect concept album. And yes, it's sort of like a bit witchy. It's a bit sad. It's a bit angry, but you can still dance to it. And I think it's the sound of 2024. So congratulations, She Drew the Gun. You Call That Radio's album of the year. And She Drew the Gun are going on tour in February. You can see them in Glasgow in February at Room 2. And I'll hopefully see you there. And yeah, let me know in the comments if you agreed or disagreed with my top 10 picks. Is there any that you've heard? Is there any that you want to check out? And if I get enough reactions, if there's enough people commenting, if enough people give a flying fuck what I think, then I'll do another 10 recommendations. Because the plan was I was going to do 20 to 11. But then I thought I'll never get round to doing another 10. And then I'll just be stuck. So if you've enjoyed this, then let me know in the comments if you want another 10 recommendations. Because I've got at least 20 top albums. I've probably got 30 So let me know if you want any more.
You want another one?
But that's my top 10 for now. Thank you for tuning in. Remember to like and subscribe. And bye!
Quantumly.